Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to Shred Sessions, and boy, do we have a special and exciting episode for you. I have Mr. Barry Donegan from the famous band Look What I Did. So,
hello,
Barry. Welcome to the show.
Nice to be with you guys.
And additionally, I've got my good friend Christian Colabelli. He's going to be joining me on the show. Christian's an amazing guitar player, a prog metal musician, just all around great guitar player and good buddy. So he's going to be hanging out with us today on this episode as well. So
what's up?
Thanks for being here.
Thanks
guys.
for having me.
So,
and of course, pleasure to be here with this
cat. Yeah, dude.
Cold chilling, man. We're cold chilling.
Heck yeah, man.
I've been Facebook friends with you for a long time, but I've like seen your posts and maybe even engaged with you on Facebook a little bit, but we know so many of the same people, so I'm so stoked that like we were able to set something up and
we get to actually kick it, man.
Yeah, man.
Kick it.
Yeah,
this is sick, dude. So I want to talk about your band. I want to talk about Look What I Did for a while, if we can.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to get like a sort of chronological, if we can, sort of breakdown of the history of that band and really just the history of you. And then we can get into like, I don't know, if you want to talk about politics, you want to talk about your worldview, anything you want people to know or whatever. Just the conversation can go in whatever direction it needs to. But first and foremost, where did you grow up? Where are you from?
I'm from Nashville, Tennessee.
Heck yeah, dude.
Not a lot of people are from Nashville, Tennessee. My family is from the area for like several hundred years. I'm like, my cousin's the current mayor of Lebanon. My dad was if you were a local Nashvilleian, 103.3 WKDF in the morning show, The Duke. That's my dad.
Wow.
He was the announcer for the Tennessee Titans for the entire time in the stadium until maybe last year, I think. And, my granddad had a bakery, the Donegan Bakery over in Green Hills. A lot of people might have gone to that over the years, had wedding cakes made and shit. That's my family's been in this area for hundreds of years.
That's wild,
That
bro.
is absolutely
I didn't know. I thought maybe you're from California and you came out here.
Now, bearing in mind, growing up, I did at one point, Look What I Did, moved to California and got a record deal at a point in our career. But like at the beginning, growing up, bearing in mind, like I'm from Nashville, so people can play in Nashville. Everyone's mom and dad, like when I was growing up, my mom's best friend was her best friend group was like Randy and Sandy Scruggs. Randy Scruggs' dad is Earl Scruggs. You know what I'm saying?
So
bluegrass royalty, basically.
Yeah, that's like they're over at my house on Saturday nights, playing guitar, just fucking around, singing and shit. And then like growing up, like my first band, granted, I'm in my second band.
Mm-hmm.
It has many of the same members as my first band, to be honest. But my very first band ever, like one drummer went on to, Dylan Napier played with Margot Price. I had Miles McPherson was in that band. He was in Paramore later. Kelly Clarkson, his dad, Jerry McPherson, was guitar player for Reba McEntire, right? He's like one of the most well-known session guitar players in the world. So, that's like Miles has drums when he's like fucking 8, you know what I'm saying? And a nice kit and like a full studio in his house. And obviously he's going to be way better than everybody by the time he's whatever. Evan Brewer was in my first band. This Brent guitar player, Brent Coleman and Patrick Dampier, they had a band that toured with 30 Seconds to Mars and had like a major label deal. That's like my first band. Those are all the people in my first band. These are just guys from Nashville that you would be in a first band with that are from your school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The guys competent enough to have a band are that good in Nashville. That's just the reality of it. You know what I mean?
That's wild, bro.
So, when you grow up here, there's just a certain, I guess it's just everyone's got instruments and there's a permissiveness to it. And, just because of the city, and also probably it's attracting a lot of DNA for many generations in a row.
Yeah, man.
Point,
That's fascinating, dude. So Evan Brewer, it's funny you mentioned him because I'm familiar with him from like the band Reflux and Animosity. And,
we toured with Animosity, actually.
Crazy, man. Yeah, I saw that on the Wikipedia article that I read about you guys.
Although Evan wasn't in the band then. Which is really funny because, like, Because bear in mind, at that point, Evan had not been in Animosity yet. And me and Evan are, like best friends since we're like 14, 16 and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So he's coincidentally, like I knew the Faceless a full 3-4 years before he was ever in the Faceless, right? I was touring with Animosity before he was in Animosity, although that had nothing to do with the reasons he was in those situations.
Yeah.
He just coincidentally was in those situations later on. But now granted, a lot of that was because he was in Reflux and knows Ash, right?
Right. The guy, Ash is the guy who, founded Sumerian
founder,
Records.
and like, Tosin was in that band, and as a result of that, so he was kind of in that crowd very early on. That's also, I think Evan is a big reason why most of your prog bass players play that kind of Wooten Brothers type style with the slap,
because he
pop.
jammed with the Wootens,
right? That's what he grew up learning with. I think he kind of caused most of your prog metal to have that, because it didn't have to have that kind of jazz fusion influence way approach. It could have been more slap. It could have been more just a faster
like a pick
style playing, but it really does seem like a lot of people have gone to that finger tapping
tapping and slapping like
style, like more in the
bass player for Archspire, Jared, he uses all of those same techniques in their technical death metal. So dude, that's fascinating. So like there's just so many musicians around when you grew up around music basically, and so did you just always know, like, I'm gonna join a band, I'm gonna do music, I'm gonna be a lead singer, or how did that all come about?
Not really, honestly. I was like, I got a 4-track. There's a lot of things in my life I do because only I feel like everyone else is scared to do it. But I had a 4-track, and I was a guitar player in my mind, and I wasn't necessarily thinking of this as a future. I was just enjoying myself. But I was like playing guitar and doing 4-track demos, and I sang and played guitar mainly because like Nirvana and Mudhoney and whatever. I just like wanted one. My friend Skeet, who's now in the band, Look What I Did with me, but he had a 4-track, and it was really cool what he was able to do with that, just making songs and shit. So I was making my own songs and singing on them. And my friends had a band, and it's just the thing is nobody wants to fucking sing. Everyone wants to play guitar. You know what I mean?
Everyone's too afraid at that stage of the game.
And everyone that was playing guitar in that band was a million times better than me. And pretty much I was not as good as a guitar player as anyone I knew. Bearing in mind that my friends are like Evan Brewer, and I mean, he's 14, but at 14, he's still destroying everybody now, at adult level. But, like the Brent Coleman in that one band, I mean, he was a shredder. He could play all the whatever, all that type of stuff. And like, but I did competently sing on an album, on a recording, and in key, and could do it in front of people. And it took me about 1 or 2. I was always kind of naturally a class clown, kind of, naturally generate attention for myself is fun for me kind of thing. I don't have any problem with that. And like
the lead singer archetype, if you will.
Yeah, I was just born with whatever that gene is, where you just you're more enthusiastic and excited about being the center of attention than you are pressured by it. But no, don't get me wrong, I was still paralyzed the first few times, but then I joined a band as a singer, and at that point we played one show. It felt like crack cocaine to me, hard. And then I went on a trip to Europe with my family, and then I just like committed to the idea of being a singer. So I just like bought some albums that were like singery albums that I thought had qualities I wanted to like expand in my abilities, and then just started like committing to the concept of being a singer and trying to be good at being a singer. And I bought I remember for that one I bought Queensryche.
Nice, dude.
I think it was Empire, and then I bought a No Doubt first record. I bought Christina Aguilera. Some of these were not necessarily because I wanted to listen to them as much as I wanted to be able to sing them. As I was trying to get my range really expanded. I got Angel Dust by Faith No More. I got Stoner Witch by the Melvins. I got Gore Guts,
nice,
Obscura.
Nice.
I got like it was mainly Jesus Lizard. that was like my first, like, okay, I'm going to become a vocalist. Here's albums. I'm going to start singing with these albums. Now, granted, when I was like a kid, I was singing along a lot with like Soundgarden and Nirvana and Alice in Chains. That's the kind of stuff I can really smoke.
Yeah.
Right.
What Soundgarden record?
I would say the one I sang the most, because bear in mind, it came out when I got my car, would be Super Unknown.
That's the one, man.
Because it is really a good singer record, because it's very, very, very hard. And there's I mean, I don't think even Chris Cornell could sing it live like
Day I Tried to Live
that well
The
himself.
Day I Tried to Live
That's
is
such a crazy vocal performance.
Unbelievably hard. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was like I'd worked on that. Now that's the shit I can nail, that stuff. That Alice in Chains, that sound. It wasn't in style during my lifetime anymore, but like, or during that era when I was old enough to do it. But it's probably back now. But
dude, people love Alice in Chains now. Like the younger kids, like I've seen T-shirts, and I teach guitar, you know. So like, what's different about teaching guitar today is like the new music coming out doesn't have guitar on it, you know, like the popular stuff. Some of
bands
it
aren't cool anymore.
Yeah. But I have a couple kids, like I have one kid who's a freshman in high school. He's obsessed with grunge. So like every week we just find a new, like, you know, 90s song, like Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam. He's like a huge Silverchair fan, so we've like learned every Silverchair
that
song.
stuff's kind of coming back, and honestly,
crazy,
the 90s
dude.
era, I feel like the 90s era attitude is going to have to come back soon, because like, I've actually, Look What I Did is just a lifetime gamble on that. Like we believe that someday people are going to stop wanting to hear music that's boilerplate and either boilerplate or just one minor adjustment to a previous boilerplate, as opposed to like in the early 90s when every band was like a unique flower that is just totally different than each other, and there was no, like, you couldn't really put, like, they just started calling shit alternative because there was no genres anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like
yeah,
that's a philosophical thing I'm trying to create. We have a new song we're working on called Post Everything, and it's kind of like, I feel like there needs to be, in order for bands to be cool again, we got to move into the post everything era where there's no longer any kind of genre limitations, and that sounds are more just, it's got to be more to it than that. And I think that's what's killing bands, is like that repetitivity is just not sparking. It's not.
Yeah.
Whereas like somebody who's not in a band and can just do a digital song and can put a million different ones out and try a bunch of experiments is just more likely to maybe hit something new that hasn't happened before. And like, so in order for bands to do that, they're going to have to move away from genre limitations and start thinking like, what can I do? Like, okay, our band has a long history. Look What I Did has a long history of, we do have had that attitude our whole time. It's like a lot of the songs we had on Minuteman, like had, my band gives me parts in like Ultimate Complete Home Fitness Machine, Appomattox Whorehouse, Minuteman For the Moment.
These are song titles.
These song titles, right?
Yeah.
These songs had parts that the band is playing that kind of sounded like Meshuggah, right? Meshuggah's big album was just coming out at the time. It's like 2003, 2002, we're writing it, right? And my attitude immediately when I hear something that I could pretty much tell what it is, like put it to another band, and I'm about to sing on it, then we're about to change that direction. You know what I mean? I'm about to do a hard M. Night Shyamalan swerve, because we're not going down like that. We're not going to do I'm not going to scream over something that sounds like Meshuggah, first of all. I'm going to start singing, right? And like, that was not really ever done in those days. And then now it's like a full genre with Djent. It's pretty much just like, you know, melodic singing and guitar over maybe like a five based math riff that's kind of low and chuggy and shit, right? That's kind of like become almost an entire genre that then was like the reason why we accidentally had some songs that were probably preliminarily in that genre, was because we didn't want to accidentally sound like Meshuggah, and the part was probably headed that direction when it was my turn to add to it. You know what I mean? So like, you know, we've always had that guide stone of, if this sounds like it's generically heading into something, then we need to add another round of tweaks to get it to feel more like a special, unique song that's not been written before. And I think that's the problem, is like there's so much music out there, and most people are just having fun doing their version of a type of, It's kind of like
something that's already been done.
It's been done. So like what's easier is just let AIs write all those songs, and then we'll have individuals play covers live, which is what's happening. Like musicians are starting to play the songs live, and we kind of don't have any new songs. We all play the songs from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s because the new songs suck. And that's kind of what's happening to music. Now, the thing is, AI can't take away ability to play live. That's something, if you're a musician and you're worried about it and you want to make a place for yourself, like that's really the future, is playing live, because a computer can't do that. But the writing of music, it's kind of like, look what I did. We take 5, 6, 7 years, 5 years to write an album. And that was kind of how bands did it in the 80s and 90s. You know, you lived life experiences, then you wrote albums about the life experience. Whereas then it became, in the 2000s, it became, you're off tour for 2 weeks. Let's go ahead and record the album, right?
Yeah.
So you're writing the album on a computer on tour, and you're recording it cheaply and badly, and then editing it later in Pro Tools for 2 weeks when you're home. And what is your songs about? Life on tour
on the road.
Band?
Yeah.
How are you gonna connect to?
It's like comedians in airports.
Yeah.
Right? That's like the airport joke.
Yeah, like you're gonna tell a bunch of jokes about shit that people have no connection to. You're gonna have a song that nobody has any connection to because you're not living in the world. Like when Deftones puts an album out, they're living in the world. They're going out and having an alcohol problem and a divorce, and then coming back and writing songs that if you've had an alcohol problem and a divorce, you might, that shit has been, the industry has crushed the professionalism of creative musicianship and turned it into, basically it has to be a vanity project by somebody with rich parents or some kind of, you know what I mean, in order to actually last. And if your band, the more creative and unique your band is, the more the music industry will fear and smother it.
Yeah.
I just know for a fact it will be like the 90s again one day, and one day we will all wake up and everyone will be like, oh my God, we're not like, there'll be some kind of band that comes out, and kind of like what happened with Nirvana, where they'll find a way to sneak through the algorithm despite not pandering to the algorithm, but they'll have something that just
that connects with people on a deeper level or something.
Then all of a sudden everyone's looking back like, okay, what over the last 25 and 30 years did we not pay attention to because we were butt fucking trends? Who ignored those trends? Let's look back. That kind of happened in the 90s. You know what I mean? It became a whole new elevation of an entire different aesthetic in terms of like not being a trend humper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, Christian was in a prog band called Circuitry. Do you want to talk about your experience like being in that band and like then being compared to other things, even though I feel like you were doing something really different with that band, or trying to, but for some reason you got roped in with a certain mold.
Yeah, we got compared to Periphery all the time. But like you, my vocalist was doing a lot of crazy melodic harmonic stuff over these insane, like, jazz fusion, like really heavily distorted, like rhythmic sections. And, I am the like same age as those Periphery guys, and I was hanging out in that kind of scene at Berklee College of Music. And
yeah, he went to school with Casey Sable, who Barry knows as well.
Okay, so yeah, I was at
his house yesterday. What's up, Casey?
I was actually jamming. I used to jam with Casey and this bass player Wes, who was great, who's now a front of house guy for Warren Haynes, but he was living in Nashville. He just moved to Atlanta, but. There was a whole scene and there was a movement. Like, I mean, it was probably right after you guys broke. So that was like probably 2006, 7, 8. And, these ideas were formulating forever. I was a huge like Sixth fan.
That's something my band always got compared to Sixth when we were first coming out.
I can hear some of that in there. I hear some like Blood Brothers in your stuff. Like I hear some crazy stuff. And you guys are doing something legitimately original. And I mean, we were listening last night after our session. That. Yeah, just to get prepared for this again. I was like, dude, this is like, it's legit original.
And bear in mind, Blood Brothers was a contemporary to us. Like, we didn't really have the ability to hear a lot of these bands.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
That was around the same time period. I mean, like, but that, we had our own thing, man. And that really, I'm still not okay mentally from that, because I put everything into this, man.
Well, bear in mind the times can change and that stuff can be elevated later. You know what I mean? Like it's I do believe in that, because I feel like bands like that are more likely to, like, I've had like like this one client of mine, he's like this drummer who's into really prog metal. He was like 20 and just, you know, blah, blah. He's fucking fired up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he's showing me like these cool bands he's likes, and you know what I mean, they're really great bands, these unbelievable bands that are like, you know, kind of like taking the things that my band was doing, but they're like, you know, obviously it's been 20 years and they're taking another direction down a path, but it's a cool
now we got
path.
some alien core going on.
Yeah,
or
just some totally cool band. They obviously have put an insane amount of skill into it, and the songs are just like a work of art. And it's like I look down and it's like 4,000 views. And I'm like, this band's already broke up. They have like 3 albums, and then you haven't listened to them. Yeah, like they're all works of art. And it's like, you know, it's kind of like there comes a point past which in music, when you put a little bit more effort and skill and uniqueness and creativity into it, you start decreasing your audience. And then also the skill level required to get to that is like virtuosic. Now, see, in my band, where I'm lucky is that my band is constantly full of like jaded people who don't give a fuck. And so they don't give a fuck if anyone listens or not.
It's funny you say that, dude. When I got better at guitar and I started practicing like 8 hours a day, like in my late 20s, like I got less gigs, you know, like people didn't want to hire me because I was playing wacky stuff.
And then you might play things that are more busy. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, and it's easier to get a crowd over with basic stuff, you know? So when you think about it that way, it's like there becomes a diminished returns. It was kind of like the guy from what's the band, starts with a P, really crazy guitar,
Periphery,
older, more
Polyphia,
crazy.
Protest the Hero,
More crazy, less
shredded.
consonant, more dissonant, Psyopus.
Oh yeah, sick. Crazy band.
Little buddy guitar player Psyopus is like
Psychroptic or
Psyopus.
Okay, different band.
It's a wild band.
Okay.
A lot of tapping and like just
yeah, just nuts, dude.
That guy's
and
nuts, man.
The guitar is nuts. And at a certain point, he's like, I can't continue to play this level for the amount of money that this is generating.
Right.
Because it's taking him fucking 10 hours a day of constant playing to even be able to play his own songs.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that. And then the fan base that he's generating with all those extra notes is actually shrinking his fan base. So it's like
the law of diminishing returns maybe applies to that.
Yeah. And same thing is true with creativity, man. The more creative you are, you know, I think of some of the most creative bands out there, like Thomas Medicine. That's a creative fucking band. It is not widely known outside Louisville, and it's a crime. Like there's just it's only a matter of time until all this great stuff is gonna.
Yeah.
Well, how about a band like Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum? Like totally, like I mean, I feel like that's wild stuff, man.
Yeah, they're great. Now you notice I got a little backstory with them. Like I booked them in Nashville for their first ever show, and we played with them. And now me and Miles McPherson got into a fist fight at the end of our set, and then I fell off stage and cracked my head on the concrete floor so loud that, you know, it was a crunch.
God.
I had a severe concussion. I couldn't
Miles
remember
is the
much.
drummer?
Yeah, he was our drummer then.
Okay.
Wow.
Me and him would get in fights when we played together when I was like 20 and he was, you know what I'm saying? Like we would
like stage antics fights, or then you take it too far?
Yeah, it would be usually I did some stage antics that went too far, and then something would escalate, but we got in a fight on that show. But Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum, we brought them to Nashville, and then when we first got a bunch of record deal interest, the very first major player that wanted to deal with us was Roadrunner.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Roadrunner.
Dillinger Escape Plan, right? Weren't they?
No, that's Relapse.
Relapse.
Roadrunner was
okay.
like Nickelback,
Kill
Trivium.
Oh, snap, dude.
It was kind of a weird situation, and like,
Yeah.
it was like Monty Connor, I think, that was reaching out to us or something, and we hit them up, and we had been talking to Dan from Sleepy Time, the bass player who produces them and makes all their weird instruments and puts pickups in them and whatever.
So weird.
He's just one of the most genius guys there is walking this earth on music. And we were like, yeah, Dan is willing to do our album, and we want Dan from Sleepy Time to do our first album. And then they responded to that with like I think it was Raffle or LOL, something.
Rolling on the floor
laughing.
laughing.
Yeah, like like yeah, you think we're gonna do that, dude? Are you kidding me? Like they were wanting us to do a record with Dino from Fear Factory, and we had this song House of Cards on our first album, I think it was.
They wanted Dino to produce it?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's never produced an album. He just hangs out at there's basically a check for Dino is the way I felt that was looking.
Oh, wow.
And then they were like, and then they gave us some other options that we met with, like this guy that was the second guitar player in Anthrax at the time. And, but they were like straight up, we like how you guys have certain songs where you have like screaming in the verse. That's unusual. And then like a really nice poppy chorus, and then like a big new wavy kind of bridge. We just kind of really would rather see 10 of those than the other stuff that you're doing.
Okay.
I mean, that was kind of like the way that the communication with Roadrunner was. It was very heavy-handed on like how we would write the songs, and I feel like the thing they were asking us to do was kind of widely being done by a lot of other bands. And it just kind of seemed like this is musically the actual thing they tell you when it's selling out. Like, this is exactly it. This is, you know what I mean? This is that right here. We were just kind of like, I don't know, laughing at the Sleepy Time Grill Museum bass player as a producer is to strike out to me. That's like, you guys don't understand. Like, this would be the sickest thing ever. And you guys have the ability to convince anyone what's sick and sell it. You know what I mean?
Sucks that like you worked really hard, you created something really unique, people were interested in it, they wanted to put it out, but then you were met with like a closed door, basically, like when you wanted
to do the thing that we wanted to do. We also had an opportunity with John Feldman at the time.
Wow.
we didn't really pursue it at all.
Around what year
That's
is this,
nuts.
Barry? Like
2003.
Okay.
I didn't pursue John Feldman just because he had done The Used and Story of the Year, and just with where Look What I Did is, that to me just was the opposite of what we are. You know what I mean? That was, to me, felt like a boy band. And
pop.
now, I'm not saying John Feldman wouldn't have treated us differently. He did end up working with like Foxy Shazam, who are friends of ours that we toured with a lot and stuff, but they might have had a good experience. But I think we made the right decision musically, and I think history will one day reward us for turning down a lot of things that would have made us, more popular and successful and rich with music. Although I don't think you get that rich selling out in music, so that's like, we avoided that mistake. But we still would have ended up broke if we'd done that. But you know what I mean? But you might have gotten your dick sucked a little harder by a little bit fewer time, more extra times while you're on a couple of those big tours. But they would have made you wear like some kind of weird lipstick that would have backfired 20 years later, or they would have had you wear like some kind of clown outfit or some kind of snake head.
You think the label would be like, hey guys, wear this?
They were just heavy-handed with so much. I think honestly the fashion even would, I'm pretty sure the contract would have had some stipulations there and everything else.
That's nuts.
That was funny. We actually had our first press kit. I remember Century Media, one of their A&R was like, dude, we all talked about your press kit. We had no interest in you guys, but everyone was talking about that press kit. But it was like, we just did our, like this, a picture of all of us like this in our underwear, and then we just like created these laminates, and it was like, we understand that lifestyle marketing is very important to you guys, so we've presented you guys with a few alternatives so that you can decide how to market the band. And it was just like us in underwear, and then you could lower these laminates down that made us into like a metalcore, like 80s fashion core band, or like into like a punk band, or like you could lower it down and we would be like a 80s metal band, or like just whatever,
anything,
whatever you want it to be, which was obviously not going to happen. But
so whose idea was that?
That was mine.
That was your, dude. That's so great.
And we sent it all to all the labels. It was basically a paper dolls,
genius
laminate thing.
That's hilarious. And no one took that and was like, we got to do this, guys.
Well, no, we had a bidding war after all this.
Shit.
It went to we had serious interest from V2, which was a Virgin imprint. The guys behind that scoping us out. There was this guy, John Seidel, who's like, he was married to Roseanne Arquette for a while. He owned the bars that were the subject of that movie, Singles, right? His personal assistant was Keith Morris from Black Flag and the Circle Jerks. So we had a private showcase in our practice space with Keith Morris from Black Flag and the Circle Jerks, which is one of the weirdest experiences in my life. He's like, you know, he's in Decline of Western Civilization, the little glasses and the braids. Like, he's such a memorable figure. And here you are doing your thing in front of basically the first hardcore frontman really that ever existed. Mm-hmm. That reminds me, there's a time me and Miles went over to John Seidel's house and Keith Morris was over there, and Miles did not know who he was. And, you know, like, we claim Black Flag as an influence. I mean, it is an influence, but like, we're sitting here talking, and we were talking about handing out offensive flyers. So we used to hand out really offensive flyers in the hand out flyers days before the internet. And Keith Morris is like, well, when I was in Black Flag, we used to, I mean, they invented handing out offensive flyers, right? And so he was just giving an anecdote along those lines. And if you'd seen Miles's face when Keith Morris said that, he like looked at him like, you can't just be like, when I was in Black Flag, you know what I mean? Like, and I was looking at Miles like, dude, he actually was definitely, visibly, and notably in Black Flag. You should probably fucking know that. No,
that's crazy, dude.
But yeah, it was. And then we had interest from. It was like what is now E1, but then it was Koch, and they had bought Combat Records, the old metal label and punk label, and they created the imprint. Then the guy who was behind the project gets terminal disease and dies. So that harms the whole project, right? Mm-hmm. They signed us and Horse the band and At All Cost. We went with them because the management group behind the label was like managers for like Atreyu and Every Time I Die and all these bands that were just kind of more happening right at that time.
You could have gotten on tour with those guys potentially.
Yeah, and they were giving us 100% creative control at every turn we took. So, and then we got hooked up with Brian Virtue, the producer who had done, you know, he had just finished doing Audio Slave. He had just recorded Chris Cornell on the same setup that I was on. He had just recorded Jane's Addiction. We borrowed all Jane's Addiction's gear.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that, man. That's
you know what I mean? Like, I was recording my record exactly the same way that Chris Cornell had just recorded his at the same place, like a couple months earlier, the same, you know.
Was Jane's Addiction an influence for you?
Yes.
Because I said to him yesterday, like, I hear so much Perry Farrell in there.
Yeah,
like,
there's a lot of it. I mean, I would argue that I'm more in key on purpose than he is, but I do take a lot of his microtonal, kind of not necessarily perfectly in key, sort of like, but really strong and still melodic kind of stuff that he does. I like take a big inspiration from
even
that.
Some of the
definitely.
Performative things, like when you're on stage,
that too. He's one of the elite performing frontmen, which is a very big part of my focus. And, you know, that's where I feel like I'm underrated, and I feel like I could take on
you are underrated,
fucking
bro.
anybody.
I love it, dude. We were watching live videos. It's like, this guy's fucking wild, man.
Like, I couldn't beat,
like,
I couldn't beat James Brown.
Yeah.
I couldn't beat Prince. I couldn't beat maybe a handful of guys. Maybe not little buddy from Fishbone. I couldn't necessarily beat him. But I feel like most anyone else, like, if you gave me the night before their frontman was sick and there was like an arena, and you gave me the night before, I might be able to sell more merch than, you know what I mean? I'll take that Pepsi challenge.
Barry, what did you think of the Perry Farrell and Dave Navarro sort of thing that happened recently on the last tour? Like, they basically canceled the whole tour, right? Like, they got in an argument on stage. Did you see that? Like,
yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm particularly aware of that type of shit because I've gotten in fights, physically altercations with band members on stage many times.
It looked like they were just having a bad night, and it just sucks that he kind of did that on stage. But I mean,
it did kind of seem like he was mentally, like, as a front man, you get yourself into an open state mentally and emotionally. If you're going into an elite place with like the performance, that sometimes makes you emotionally unwell in the middle of the performance, right? And sometimes that emotional unwellness is just the awesome performance, and then you're kind of almost setting. It's almost like method acting, right?
Yeah.
But a performing version of that. And like, so I'll have certain songs where like the songs are about something where, it's like a personal thing, and it's like I want to be upset while I'm singing this. So I let myself think about something that gets me upset so that I'll be upset, right? But see, that sometimes you take that, let that go down the path too fucking far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? Like it's the risk, you know what I mean? It's like, that something could just go too far. And then the thing is though, the difference is that in my crew of friends, and maybe it's because we're dominantly Scotch-Irish, Tennessee Southerners that make up Look What I Did, is like a fist fight wouldn't cancel a tour.
Yeah.
It might not even cancel the night hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like the fist fight should mean that you solved this.
We resolved something.
You know what I mean? Like, this doesn't mean there needs to be further pettiness. Like, you've already swung over it.
Now so it's like people are getting the police involved and
yeah.
Like,
I'm just not from that culture. I'm just not from that culture. I'm from the culture of if you and your bros get into a little bit of an overheated thing, you might take a couple swings on each other, and now you've expressed yourself, and you don't have to. You know, I'm not talking about running around beating women or something, but as far as between dudes, where you kind of like just have an emotional flare up.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I'm still friends with Miles to this day. Like, you know what I mean? It still might swing on his ass, but you know, he might swing on me or something. You know what I mean? That might happen, but like it's a friend.
It could happen.
If somebody else swings on his ass, I'll swing on their ass. Though.
Man, I've in my experience in the last like 10 or 15 years, and I don't mean to throw any of my previous bandmates under the bus, but I just find that there's a lot of codependence in like certain band settings where people don't express themselves, and then the art kind of suffers, and like you sort of sell yourself short. I know I'm being very vague, like when I'm talking
in terms
about this.
of musically, or in terms of just speaking up about things that aren't going your way within the
or just being afraid to be like, dude, this song sucks, we should not play this song ever, like we should let's write something better.
Communicating that stuff is really hard. I remember I was watching this old video of like Look What I Did during the Minuteman era, and like granted, when you're in your early 20s, your testosterone's just going nuts, and just as a man you can be kind of a little bit nuts. But like I remember like were in pre-production, and they were working on some song all day, maybe for 8 or 10 hours, and I think I'd been working or something, and I showed up and I walked in, and they played this thing they've been working on. I was like, wow, that was a lot of horse shit. You know what I mean? And then it was just like, that was my reaction. And then all of them were like deflated, which I had no idea at the time. I just thought, oh yeah, that sucked. Yeah. So, I mean, I learned eventually that you have to not only pick your battles, but you have to, now granted, Minuteman, I used that strategy and we got Minuteman. So yeah, it is what it is. But at the same time, later in my career, I started thinking like, maybe I'll let them get their vision more one way, and then I'm going to be less heavy-handed about the individual parts in terms of me trying to weigh in on them, just to allow the density of the parts to change in some way. You know what I'm saying? Take my own hands off of it.
Yeah.
Later on. But like at that time I was like, yeah, I would sometimes be really rude looking back in expressing, you know, and that might even make somebody else not want to express. It's funny with Look What I Did, it has so many different eras, but like in that one, it was Miles and Colby. Colby Shea is Evan Brewer's cousin, right? Incidentally. Mm-hmm. But Miles McPherson and Colby were really dominating when it came to songwriting in that era. Mm-hmm. And then like, you know, later eras, it might have been our bassist at one point, Ty and Skeet, that were more dominating in it. And then, you know, now Evan has kind of got a lot of songs where he's kind of built a lot of the core of it, or Chris might, you know, it's like it's almost never me that, you know, there's been a couple songs where I like wrote significant parts. One of them is Fox Eats TV Ishmael though, which I'm really proud of. I wrote that riff and everything.
So you were talking about just some of the dynamics between the different band members when you guys were writing the record Minuteman for the Moment. Like, talk again about like the writing process during that time. Like, how did Look What I Did write music together?
That one was a little different because we had basically we'd written like maybe 5 or 6 of the songs, and we'd had a demo, and then we had just gotten signed, and we just suddenly had like a deal where we were living in LA. We just got signed. We were about to go on tour, and we had like an album recording date coming up, and we had like a pre-production recording or pre-production rented out for 2 weeks. You know what I mean? It was like a
How come you
suddenly
guys moved to LA? Why did you go over there?
When we moved there, it was like 2001, 2. Nashville was just there was a really cool scene here. And I had been running this venue, Next Generation, and a bunch of really cool stuff was popping off. That kind of fell apart, and I just didn't really. I had been doing a little bit of show trading and starting to tour, and I just didn't really see much for rock bands in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And LA, on the other hand, had a big scene for that.
Yeah.
And so we just moved there, started flyering everything in sight, started promoting on MySpace kind of before anyone else ever did that. And quickly we had a big club draw before we even played, honestly.
Wow.
That was one problem. We had a big club draw, and we were trying to find a drummer because Miles did not come with us to LA.
Oh, wow.
And we couldn't find anyone that could play the shit that Miles had written already. We had this guy, Eli, who was later on in Horse the Band, and he just couldn't really play the parts completely. He didn't really commit the time. And so when we let him go, I actually hooked him up with Horse the Band because I knew them and I knew they were looking for a drummer, and I knew their shit was a little easier to play. So he'd probably be able to pull that off. And he did, and he joined them, and he was in the band quite a long time. But although he held it against us forever and sabotaged one of our shows because of the,
oh no,
he was bitter about us not taking him. But Miles, we got a record deal and had a giant club draw with no ability to play. And then Miles just came and joined the band back again and moved to LA after we got a record deal, because it was kind of like, come on, man, just let's try this out. Right. So we go in this, we have to write like 5 or 6 more songs to hit the mechanical, the mechanicals. And so we do 6 more songs. We write them in the pre-production in a really intense, dense period of time. I wrote my vocals on that, and then subsequently from there on out by putting headphones on and just walking, listening to the demos on the streets of LA, just singing really loud over my headphones to myself like a fucking nut job. And that's kind of how I've written ever since, as I walk around in public on crowded streets and sing out loud as fuck while listening to the demo. That's
sick, dude.
Literally how I write. That's always how I've written.
You should go to the Green Hills Mall and do that for the next record.
Oh yeah. If anyone ever catches me, dude, I will look like
a little bit of album promo.
But yeah, back then, I was just walking the streets of LA at night, and then we were like trying to get that knocked out in time. And then when we did get it. I mean, granted, we had some little issues though, like our like John Daly was our, I'm not hating, but I just have a standard, right? And then he was our A&R at the label, right? And he was managing Every Time I Die, and they gave me like 2 days to do vocals. After 2 days, I had like 1 song. Bear in mind, if you listen to Minuteman, there's some 5-part harmonies.
Yeah,
there are just these like jazzy ass chords that like you absolutely have to be fucking correct, or the whole thing will be sour as hell.
Mm-hmm.
It was not easy to sing any of that stuff, and there was a lot of screaming that gave me a concussion after a certain amount of it. I can't just do an unlimited amount of like 4 and 5 stacks of screaming. And after 2 days, I had very little done. And then John is like, dude, Every Time I Die, he had 4 days on Hot Damn. And I was just like, yeah. And you can hear that he had 4 days on Hot Damn. And I will stand by that. There's a lot of out of key notes that could have been in key if he had more time. And I believe that. That's the problem the industry was getting into at that point, and is why people don't listen to bands anymore. They started expecting you to do your album in 2 weeks when you get off tour. You know what I'm saying? And
totally exhausted.
The singer gets 2 days to do fucking 12 songs of vocals where they're yelling on 80% of the album, and their voice is just gonna be totally annihilated and shredded, and they're gonna be out of key on all their singing parts. And like what we were doing couldn't be done that way. I couldn't be out of key on a 5-part harmony 5 different times on top of itself with dissonant guitars and stuff, it would have sounded like hell. Now, granted, Every Time I Die, you actually can get away with that. His style, I don't think it sounds bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it does sound like it's out of key and stuff in ways that he probably didn't mean to on the actual album because they didn't give him very much time. You know what I mean? And like, I just straight up said, yeah, and listen what it sounds like. And then he just kind of like relented and let me take a month of 12 hour. It took me a month of 12-hour singing the whole time. I was like laying on the ground with splitting headaches, standing up, doing one line, laying back down, trying to get enough glycogen back in my fucking head muscles to be able to like sustain one more concussive screech. And, you know, but it was awesome working with Brian, and we learned so much. The 2 albums we did with Brian about recording. And
what, just for the viewers, like what other albums did Brian do around that time that people might be familiar with?
The Audio Slave one, the last one, Jane's Addiction Strays, he had just done. Now, Jane's Addiction Strays, it's a Bob Ezrin album where Bob Ezrin does not show up a single day to the studio to do a single thing.
His name is attached to it.
The Audio Slave album was a Rick Rubin album, but Rick Rubin doesn't show up to do a single thing or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to diss or whatever. Like they're.
I don't think very many people know that though.
Yeah,
that's
but
like
a lot of times there's a guy who's the producer is just hiring basically an engineer who is then making every single decision and doing every single thing, and then the producer just signs off at the end or doesn't. You know what I mean? A lot of times the producer's name is there to get you on the radio, right? And that was one problem. A lot of the producers we wanted to work with, like Sleepy Time guys, not going to get you on any radio stations, right? Brian had enough recent big time credits that he was like passing all the checks with the label and everything. He was like the perfect fit for us because it actually was musically what we wanted, and he gave us full reign and let us explore all the crazy shit we wanted to do. We have this song Zanzibar 2 on that one,
the final track.
And there's this part where I like intentionally was out of key and then I pitch shifted it, and it's like just really hard to listen to section. That was intentional. It was like a character. Like when they came to like check on the album while we were recording it, like that's the part we played. We played in like these really awful, hard to tell what the fuck's happening, like intentionally out of key stuff. Like oh man, this is gonna be our jam right here. We were just like relentlessly fucking with them. Maybe it wasn't a good idea looking back, but maybe if we had done like they wanted and just did Cupid Full of Arrows and gave them a nice big video for that, and then let them put Is, Was, and Will Be on VH1 like they wanted to do, which to me sounded like totally insane. To have anything on VH1 that might cause a VH1 viewer to buy any Look What I Did stuff would just be a recipe for like consignment returns. You know what I mean? Like on a certain level, but I don't know. Sometimes maybe they were right.
Dude, it's a 12-track, 55-minute record. It's like it's really a substantial piece of art. You know what I mean?
That's what we were trying to do. And I think if the longer time passes, the better that record sounds and looks. So I'm just going to trust that that's going to work itself out in the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It sounds super organic too. I mean, that's something we were saying yesterday from listening to it.
It was refreshing to
It's
listen
2-inch
to.
tape.
Yeah.
It's no drum. There might be mild bits of drum replacement, but it wasn't like it is now where it's like an entirely engineered drum. I mean, it's a drum performance.
Every grid.
It's like,
did you guys
not
play
tuned.
that to a click? Or is that
there's some songs with clicks, some songs with partial clicks, some songs with one click and then another click, and then some songs with no click. It kind of depended on.
So it's like a guitar player and a bass player doing scratch tracks or something, like with a drummer, and then they go back and retrack the drums, kind of a thing. Okay.
Yeah. It would be like that. And then there would be certain tracks where we would like have a tempo change in the middle of the track, so there would be like a new click, and we would maybe like start over and record that separate or something a little bit on that one. There were some tempo changes on that album. We were playing a lot with time signatures we always do, but I feel like we're getting better at hiding the baseball a little bit there to where you don't realize how warped the time signature is. And that's always been my job in the band as a vocalist, is to try and diffuse the complexity of the song by kind of bowling over some of the parts, like maybe, you know what I mean? Just making the vocal kind of, like for example, on like with those Meshuggah style 5/4 type polyrhythm parts, like if you do a 4/4 on top of a 5/4 and you just start late, the audience may not know that it's not a 4/4 well, not that they care, but you know what I'm saying? Just a 3-4-4-4 just for an audience is just smooth. They know where to put their foot down and where to knock their head.
Dude, I noticed in the song the soiree, the third
soiree.
The soiree, is that how you say that?
Yeah, it's French.
My apologies. On that track, it's in like 3/4, and there's like a Norwegian wood like inspired. Do you know the song I'm talking about? It's like a Beatles tune. Christian actually called it out.
That's what the melody reminded me
but
of.
the melody that you do
like,
in that song is like, it's like Norwegian wood. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da.
Like I've always wanted, I'm waiting for the day when I get credit for that fucking song, both for the lyrics and the melody and the verse in particular, because like, first of all, like I'm doing a waltz on the rhythm. That's a polyrhythm in the first place,
dude.
But the melody is like, because their part is it's a really angular, jerky, noisy part with not a lot of room for a vocal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm looking at that, how do I fit into this? I'm like, I'm kind of going to go a little bit musical theater.
Okay.
And I'm just going to waltz, because that's just the most inappropriate thing to do with a beat like that. And then just be like, you know, you know, just like a big musical type melody, like a melody
was really
that
good, man.
Yeah,
you know,
and
but to do it, it had to be little moments where it goes, you know, a lot of a chromatic walk up to get me through a part where that way I don't go into a poisonous note, because I'm like, you know what I'm saying? You had to zigzag with the music underneath to not hit. I mean, just those melodies had to be really carefully put together. You know what I mean? And the lyrics are timed just the way they are. And I feel like if you get it, one day people are going to listen to that song like 100 times until you get it. The soiree by Look What I Did. So that one day people will realize what I was doing with the vocals of the verse. There's a little inspiration from like Shudder to Think, right?
such a cool band.
Which I think is they're just gotten back together, and hopefully they'll get their fair share too, because they, you know, have albums with 100,000 views on the music video, where it's one of the best songs ever made. Just complete horseshit, but they should be a household name, definitely. But I mean, I saw them open for the Foo Fighters in a club in 328.
It's nuts.
And it was like the Foo Fighters, was Smooth Fighters, dude. I didn't even remember they played. I honestly don't remember anything about the Foo Fighters set, because it started to think blew my fucking head off. You know what I mean?
Craig Wedrins does a lot of Netflix stuff now.
Yeah, he does. He's like written
scores.
Craig Wedren got his money. He's written everything on TV that you've ever.
He's incredible, man.
All the TV soundtracks he's basically done in Netflix since then. But that band was a huge influence, and that was kind of like part of the influence on, because what they do with their they'll have like one, let's say, mode that the guitar and the vocals are in, and then maybe one that the guitar and the bass are in, and then maybe the vocals and the guitar are not very compatible, and it creates like a what do you call it, a contrast. Like music doesn't use a lot of contrast. It's like a lot of like bright colored 3-color music in American music, like happy, you know, is this part, and mad is this part. Whereas they have parts that are more like a picture of like a West Coast horizon, where there's a flaming town in there. You're not sure why the town is flaming, and you see the beauty of the whole horizon, and like you can't tell if you're supposed to look at the flaming house or the horizon.
It's surrealism.
Yeah, it's
multi-dimensional kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's just not like it's not obvious. Like most American pop and rock music is super obvious and very different from like classical music or something. Their shit is like a rock song with the classical music level of soundscape and picture.
True.
And what band? Remind me of what band we're talking
We're talking
about.
about Shudder to Think.
Shuddered to think.
You're not familiar with it? You gotta check them out, dude.
I'm not familiar,
It's
man.
gonna blow your mind, dude. They're
slacking, boys.
When I worked for Eventide, I actually got to hang with Craig Wedren at his studio.
Oh,
and
wow.
He used a lot of Eventide plugins, but he was just showing us how he created the tunes or like whatever he was composing for these Netflix shows, and he's a genius, man. He's just just a cool figure. Like very, very intelligent, thinks about stuff in his own space.
Yeah, his own way.
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
He's an artist genius.
Dang.
Obviously,
cool guy.
you know?
Yeah, that's incredible. Barry, how do you write lyrics, man? How do you come up with? Because there's so much different odd time stuff going on. There's singing, there's screaming, there's like spoken word, like sound. There's just crazy stuff you're doing. Where do you draw your inspiration for your lyrics? Like, is there a certain headspace that you have to get into when you're writing, or walk us through that, man?
I've always been better as a writer than anything else in my life. Like if I entered a poetry contest when I was a teenager, I automatically win that motherfucker, even if I barely tried. You know what I mean? like that's kind of something I've been good at. I was always really into like Latin poetry when I was like in middle school. I was like super into Catullus, and to the point where I have a Catullus tattoo. But so a lot of the poetry has always been something I've done. There's no outlet for it, so it's like whatever. But lyrics is an outlet for some of that skill, right? And then now the band, I've always been in a band of virtuosic musicians who are allowed to do whatever the hell they want, and then I have to come in and kind of like figure out how to like sell this with the vocals, right? That's kind of the strategy of Look What I Did. So it's for a band that has I in the name, and it's one of the least heavy-handed frontmen in terms of I'm trying to give these incredible musicians freedom to do whatever and I'll take the Pepsi challenge. Like, you listen to Miles McPherson on Minuteman for the Moment playing drums and find me something else he played on that awesomely. You know what I mean?
The drumming's incredible.
He's played on some awesome stuff that sold a lot of records. That sold more records than that. But when has he played that fucking awesomely for 12 tracks?
Dude, the double bass playing is so insane. We're not talking like going for a jog type double bass, or even like the super fast like heel toe shit that people are doing these days. Like really intricate patterns played extremely fast, and like they just happen for like a split second in the song, and then that's it.
And he's also he's got a fluid groove, and he swings, really hard. He hits hard. He's like can play any weird, jazz, funk, whatever you need to play. Like if it's not, he's just unreal. But like most of his most unreal shit, we got on tape, and you know what I mean, because I give the musicians the freedom to do whatever the fuck they want as a vocalist. But the trick there is I've got to figure out a way to sell that. And so I have to take every single part as like a different challenge. Like what can I do to make a vocal actually appear on this, that you can tell what the hell's happening. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like a lot of heavy bands, they end up with just screaming one way over and over again, because it's kind of easier to be a crash cymbal than it is to be, you know what I mean? If you have a lot of busy stuff going on and a lot of noise that's difficult to figure out where you fit into. That's kind of why I drew a lot of influence from a lot of different genres, like where it's like the vocalist is good at standing out on a heavy band, right? Like I kind of take from everything, whether it be punk, hardcore.
Keep talking. I'm just gonna adjust something here really quick.
Metalcore, rock, blues, jazz, funk. Every type of singing has a place for being able to stand out with a melody or something over a particular piece of music, right? And since my band has got so many different things that it can do, I basically had to be, I wanted to have the Batman belt of a Mike Patton, where instead of being like Mike Patton, where it's like his era versatility, I wanted that type of versatility, but with my era, with like, the hardcore, death metal, funk, rock vocals of my era, the new evolution of it, where you had that same Batman belt, but also that same Batman belt, but where the lyrics are more, have a different kind of entire tone than what he does. He's kind of like, he's more like, I'm going to experiment with these soundscapes in a song and try to reach a new place with music, but I don't feel like he's very personal with anything he's doing. Like you're not getting much of a window into what kind of person he is through his songs, right? You know what I mean? And mine are like, might have more, I feel like I've put a little bit more into the non-musical side of my thinking and life and evolution as a writer than a lot of other, maybe frontmen are. Like, it's more, I have a lot of political values or views, sometimes not values, but observations. I have a lot of like social commentary observations that have always been a compulsion I have to get out. And, that. And also, I don't give a fuck about getting people pissed off. And I almost feel a responsibility sometimes when I feel like everyone's gone off the rails too far and everyone's scared to do certain things. I feel like that's the one thing that makes me more unique than anything else is that everyone's scared to do something, but we all kind of know it's got to be done.
You're the guy.
Yeah, I feel like
you're the guy to do it.
I don't have a problem with it. You know what I mean?
Some of your Facebook posts, man, like it's stuff that I've thought about or wanted to say, but it's like, I'm an active musician, and this is something else I wanted to ask you, man, because it seems like in the music industry, especially in like the hardcore punk metal kind of side of things, like, let's be honest, Metal Sucks is just super leftist. Every article that they write has some sort of bent, and some sort of leftist sort of way of, policing the metal fans almost. But you will post something on Facebook that's just something that came to mind or some kind of observation that's unique. I mean, you were talking about USAID or something at some point. When all of that stuff was in the news. And I read the comments. I was like, man, people are getting pissed about this.
I mean, people will come at me, and like, I do think it's kind of, in some ways, it has throughout the history of the band kind of hurt us a little bit. I feel like, look what I did as guys. Like, we don't necessarily fit in to the type of people that are musicians.
Yeah.
Like, we're more like, like guys that weren't necessarily outcasted by society.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we were not necessarily needing a band to get laid, if you know what I'm saying. So our band is not necessarily about pandering to get laid or pandering to get validation.
Yeah.
It's more about expressing ourselves. And I think a lot of people that are in the music world are kind of like not in there because as much that they love it, as much as that's the thing they can do to, like, I don't know, get laid or get validation. And so they're pandering a lot of the times with the way that they write, to like basically cartoon base interests, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of, I mean, not to shit on it, because people's got to get laid or whatever, but it's just like, I feel like there's
people's got to get laid.
You know what I mean? Like,
shirt,
I just feel like when you're the kind of dude who like plays sports and, didn't need a band to get laid, and your band doesn't pander to women or to get laid, like it just writes songs that it's expressing, then like the music scene kind of looks at you like, that guy's kind of a dick. He's not like he's not a part of our outcast tribe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When in reality, I'm like, this shouldn't be like that. This isn't music. It should be about, anyone should be able to play music. You shouldn't have to be like getting bullied at lunch in high school to be.
Well, that's what it feels like. And
you know what I mean?
And like, just to go back to what you were talking about earlier, like, I can understand the perspective of like, just shut up and play some music. We don't need to hear your political beliefs. You know what I mean? I can understand that. Like,
I can respect it.
Like, just shut up and play guitar, like.
I mean, I don't put like obvious, basic, like left, right, generic political shit in my songs. I do put political shit in my songs, but it's more like longer window. That I think if you look back at all of our political songs, like they're usually like 10 years earlier than when everyone else was talking about it. And so there wasn't really any controversy when we wrote it, but if we put it out now, it'd probably be crazy controversy. You know what I mean? But I try to keep things I don't take like whatever's in the news that everyone's already figured out a divisive like position to be in and play with that. But I usually play with a broader concept. But you know, I do respect the idea, just shut up and play. Like if somebody doesn't want to like hear that when they're listening to music, like they can not listen to that kind of music. You know what I mean? It's just that I like, you know, records that, you know, do push you and challenge you. I even listen to, you know, records with political views I don't agree with.
No, I mean, I grew up listening to Rage Against the Machine, and I was like, what are these guys even talking about? Like, so it got me like researching a lot of things. You know, Israel, Palestine, you know, and prisons, you know, 1,000 jail cells open up to greet you like the Reaper, you know, like these lines in those songs. I'm like, I had to, like, as an 8th grader, I'm like, what does this mean?
People you disagree with are going to have a lot of good points too that you're going to learn from. You know, you might agree with them on certain things.
I was fascinated by it.
Now, the only famous person to ever not take a flyer when I was handing out flyers that I've ever run into that would refuse a flyer and not take it was Zach De La Roca in my life experience. That's the only like famous LA.
That's crazy.
When I was like handing a flyer on the streets, the only guy that was like, "Nah, I'm too cool." Or no, he didn't say, "Nah, I'm too cool." He said, "Nah, I'm cool."
We were talking about how like it seems like in like the hardcore punk world, there's like a certain type of political philosophy, probably the left leaning, that you're supposed to like believe. Why do you think that's the case, man? Like just in your experience, like why?
Well, left politics deals more in empathy and in its rhetoric.
Yeah.
Right. Which is more attractive to artistic-minded, creative-minded people, I think, in general.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, whereas like thinking about how the money, I mean, that's one reason why the record industry gets screwed over is that nobody in music has any business sense. So they're the most screwed over group probably that exists.
Right.
Because they don't know how to demand money, because they don't worry about money. They're just like, I don't care about the money, will work itself out as long as I do great at art, you know, which is not true. Actually, it will not work out. You better learn how it works or you're going to get screwed. Yeah. And like, you know,
it's like a tale as old as time. It's happened to so many artists.
Yeah. It's kind of the nature of the music game. So it's like, I think just because they're more empathetic and that rhetoric is more appealing to them. It's just that for me, I was raised in a political family. I was raised with a lot of education about how the system works. I saw how it worked firsthand with family members, you know, being heavily involved in politics. And it's like, the reality is there's no such thing as good or bad side. There's no such thing as a good party and a bad party. There's just this coalition of powers and interests, all of which are selfish and self-absorbed. Not a single one of them is virtuous and good. All the ones that claim they're virtuous and good are not virtuous and good. Most of them are just, you know, whether it's an instinct because you were raised a certain way, or it's because all your friends are a certain way and you don't want to get outcasted, or you have a particular interest that you're trying to get a sketchy backroom deal from some politician that you're paying off, or, you know what I mean? There's always an interest. So like the only realistically what solves problems is having the right combination of opposing interests hammering into each other at all times. Like I'm never going to believe like a politician is like good. You know what I mean? Like they may have good motives on one or two decisions here and there, ones that don't have, you know, if you give a politician a decision that there's no donor that has weighed in on it, there's no constituent that's weighed in on it, they actually might do a morally good thing on that. You know what I mean? Because then there's nothing else to do but do a morally good thing. It's just, unless you want to just be bad, which most of them probably aren't that bad, but they are self-absorbed and they're all worried about their own interests and they don't see past their own interests. And in a world where, I think during the pandemic, you really saw that, because you had a new stratification of left and right, right? A lot of people that were previously left got told they were suddenly right, and a lot of people that were previously right like joined the left. You know what I mean? I think a lot of your like Bush Republicans, Dick Cheney style Republicans kind of joined the left because they're more like, who's willing to force people to do stuff? Yeah. Whoever's willing to force people to do stuff, we're on their team. It doesn't matter what the reasoning behind it is or whatever. That's kind of more their thought process. And those people were like the Republican authoritarians that just wanted authoritarianism, and the Republican Party had been friendly to that, you know, in the early 2000s and stuff. And then the pandemic hits, and then there became this like sudden, I feel like there's a lot of people that had corporate jobs where like the work from home kind of transition really super benefited their life, and they were like really into like making the pandemic go harder and longer. to try and increase the benefits to their basic personal life that had happened based on this. But then there was another crowd that was like unsustainably told like to not do stuff that can't not be done. And it created a lot of people who were like, got to see what an authoritarian government looks like. That I'd never seen one before, you know, where they come in and they're like, you're going to have to like send home 150 employees that you've been at your small business. They've been working for you for 50 years. You're going to have to keep paying your rent. You're going to have to keep paying all this stuff. In the meantime, you're not allowed to take any customers in. And this is going to go on for 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks is now, okay, 6 weeks. Okay, now it's like 3 months. Starts to get to a point where it's like that guy's killed himself now. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh shit, like that person's alignment is going to start, you know, you saw a whole weird political realignment. I just sat where I still was and watched people swirl around me. But
I mean, I think to me, it was a push to get rid of a lot of small businesses, you know, basically put some stress on them so that the bigger corporations could be more like successful and bolstered.
I think there was a financial crisis was coming, and they all knew that this pandemic was maybe an excuse to kind of take some of the bad stuff on their books and all kind of like blame it on whatever, and then kind of get government to print money and kind of fix everything at once. But the problem they didn't really think about is that the damage that does to the broader health of every other thing in the economy.
Inflation.
The inflation. I think they were under a real belief system that inflation wasn't real, that because the quantitative easing had been working. Had been working. So it was kind of like they didn't really believe that it was possible the inflation could happen, and then they took it to a crazy level. Like when you think about the amount of spending everyone was doing sitting at home.
Oh, dude, everybody had cash during the pandemic.
As a trainer,
extra money.
I've seen my job has changed so much because of the pandemic. Like pre-pandemic, I was mainly training women, and it was mainly about getting their bodies in kind of a certain look or whatever. Whereas now it's like I have a lot of like 20-year-old men who have like never had a girlfriend in their whole life, who are like. The guy's like got blue eyes and he's like 6 foot tall and has a job and like has never had a girlfriend in his life or something. And it's like, I got like a lot of that kind of client as a 20-year-old man. I
want to be jacked like you, Barry.
I've never even heard of that kind of thing happening to a 20-year-old man that didn't have like some kind of genetic situation he was trying to work with that was complicated. Like even in my high school, the guy that was 5'3",
bro, it's because he
got a sense of humor and he nailed some stuff down by the time he's 17, 18. It wasn't in his like mid-20s.
It's because he lost like 2 years of his life learning how to socialize and approach women and talk to them in public.
Yeah, and
they only know how to talk to people online.
The Me Too thing, I think the lesson was only heard by the people who didn't need to hear it, and
scared the shit out of a bunch of young men.
Yeah, the guys who are going to do that stuff already knew it was wrong and don't care.
Yeah,
and then the guys who really are probably too timid and needed to step up, listened to something that wasn't aimed for them, and believed that women just hate being complimented at all, which is not true at all. Like, I mean, there will be those occasional ones that have been pre-traumatized that, you know, you might have to adjust your maneuvering if you've said something to them and they reacted really super nuclear bad, but where you don't do that a second time. But like, you know, that's really not true that you go holler at a chick and she's going to freaking blow your head off and go on the internet and shame you as this bad person. Like, that's really super rare that ever happens.
Dude, I have been in Planet Fitness in the gym and I saw like a 50-year-old guy, like high five, like 24-year-old young lady. And it was an attractive young lady. And she was just walking by and he just like high fives her. And then she immediately goes to like the front desk to complain about that guy.
That's kind of wild.
Being like, that guy creeped me out, you know? Like,
that's kind of wild.
I'm just like, dude, he gave you a high five. Just shake it off. Or walk up to him and be like, hey, man, I'm not here I'm here for business, not pleasure. You know, just like, I don't know, man. It was like, are we at school again?
Stuff
guys?
has gotten a little like ramped up.
Here.
I think with social media, some of that stuff's gotten a little ramped up. And granted, I'm sympathetic to the notion that women for survival have to be careful about creepy dudes like getting an interest in them and chasing them into the car and stuff. And there's certain things to it, but like,
of course, yeah,
it's a real thing. But that said, like, I think people have been made to feel like if you do hit on a woman, you will be it will be carceral. You'll like probably go to fucking jail. You'll lose your job.
Yeah.
And it's not true at all. And it's actually probably a better time now than ever because no one's doing it. So it's got 100 times the power it used to have.
Girl, she's,
you know what I mean?
You look great, you know? Or
yeah.
whatever,
if you're a 20-something-year-old guy and you haven't got a girlfriend, and no matter what you look like, what you need to do is go out and get yourself rejected 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Well, and see how many weeks it takes. I bet you don't make 6 weeks. But
first they should train with you.
Yeah, and then I'll get you jacked for 6 months.
Get jacked, boost your confidence a little bit. Boom, then go out and start talking to chicks.
Yeah, then you. But that's actually become a big part of my business because I think the pandemic has ruined a lot of young men in terms of their self-confidence and their belief in and their motivations for trying in life.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's palpable after the pandemic. It's that realignment, man. It really kind of changed a lot of stuff forever, and we haven't gone back. I mean, a lot of people's health habits have gotten so bad. You know what I mean? We've lost a lot of people from the music scene over this period of time. You know, where their addictions went from, you know, funny on the weekend to like not funny. You know what I mean? It even seems like Mike Patton from Faith No More actually now has like a serious alcohol problem.
A rough time.
Making it hard for him to be Mike Patton anymore because of the pandemic. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I know that for a fact, but just from what I've observed in the media recently and all the people talking about him, it seems like there's been, and he was like kind of a sober guy most of his career. You know what I mean? Like, pandemic has really wrecked a lot of stuff, and I don't think we've all woke up and like realized like, you know, what has actually changed.
I saw that Mr. Bungle show literally right before the pandemic. You know, when they came back and they played with Lombardo and Scott Ian, and literally right after that, Mike Patton was like, you know, the pandemic happened and they tried to do another tour whenever they could, and he had mental health issues from that. I really think you're exactly right. I think he's having trouble with that. Like, I don't even think he's communicating with the Faith No More guys right now. I think there's there's issues.
Yeah,
you know?
and you're you know, you give all this isolation and time off and money and alcohol and DoorDash and tell everyone like, for America you need to watch Netflix and DoorDash and day drink, and you know what I mean? And like a lot of people got serious health problems.
People got into the alcohol during the pandemic. Like, there's nothing else to do. You're at home, you know? So yeah, that's dark stuff. Well, dude, talk about what you do for your work now, man. And you're a personal trainer, right?
Yeah, I got a personal training gig.
Like, you're super active. Like, what got you into like health and fitness and just being like active and stuff like that?
Like, I was always into sports, and
which sports again?
I always liked like growing up football, baseball, basketball,
the American
mainly.
Sports.
Yeah. I did run track, and I played in a really competitive soccer team. But that was because of how I developed athletically. I was not good at the things I wanted to play. Well, I was good at football. My school didn't have a team, but I've always been a fast runner, and I'm crazy. And you know what I mean? Like,
you are a little crazy.
I'm explosive, and like even when I was skinny, I could tackle and like whatnot. But and I got long arms and stuff. But it was like my stepdad was super jacked, and you know he was really involved in my upbringing since I was 1, and he was just crazy jacked. And I was like, I'm 5'11" and like 100, and if I was like didn't lift weights when I was 18, I was 135 pounds. I'm just if you can see, my wrists are really slim. I have really long limbs and slim bones. I weigh 160 pounds now. Most people think I'm like 200, 180 or something. You know what I mean?
Wow.
But I just have really slim, light bone structure. So I was easy to bully at a certain point in my life. And I just noticed with my dad, my granddad was 6'5" and had my same length of arms, and my dad was like jacked, and the two of them, it was like nobody would ever talk sideways to them. It never happens to them. You know, if they get mad, everyone's worried. You know what I mean? That they're mad. So it was
kind of
like,
ever have like a cage match or some kind of fight, stepdad and dad?
No, well, my stepdad and my granddad.
Oh,
now
sorry.
my granddad definitely tried to intimidate my stepdad.
I'm being a goofball now
because he was my mom's. He was trying to be with my mom. You know what I'm saying? So my granddad would intimidate the hell out of people for that kind of stuff. But I just saw from them the respect they would get. So I started lifting weights because my dad had weights, and I was like kind of early in weightlifting. And I was always a sports guy, but when I became a music guy, I didn't really leave that behind. And like in the 90s, 80s. It wasn't really normal for like long-haired motherfuckers to be like in sports and at the gym and stuff, but I just was anyway because I always was in those environments. And so now I feel like I'm kind of like an ambassador to like the gym for like a lot of people in the music industry and stuff who are kind of like not part of the jock culture or
that's
the
really cool, man.
Physical culture. It's like kind of I'll help them. And a lot of my training business is like usually one-on-one most of the time. It's a lot of like musicians, burlesque performers, like drag queens, like strippers, like, a lot of entertainment people who are like maybe not lovers of the gym setting and who want real results. But also I can sometimes help them with their, I'm a musician who's played almost 1,000 shows, who's, you know what I mean? I know a lot of other advice if they're in the music business or they're a performer or entertainer, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of like that goes into it. And I also just have clients that are general fitness clients. I've helped people lose like, 100 plus pounds. I got this Jilly Beast, this one client, Jilly Beast, man. She's like a 55-year-old lady who's like deadlifting crazy weights and super jacked. And she's lost, 125 pounds.
I think we saw a video of her like freaking, she had maybe 4 plates on either side.
Yeah, she's just going crazy. She just
what?
she just gets super enthusiastic about it and has gone all in and stuff. It's cool to be able to change people's lives. I didn't really know that. I got into fitness because I can get myself into hella shape. Like I think looking back, like one reason we got a deal in the early days is that we were like shirtless, kind of muscular dudes. That was actually not cool in the early 2000s, but we did it anyway, and it did. Girls would come to the shows and stuff. Like that's one thing when we were on metal tours, the headliners were always happy because
look what I did brought out the
we
ladies.
may only bring 15 to 20 people on each tour date. 8 of them will be a girl. And if it's a metal tour, now we got 10 girls at the show instead of 2.
Heck yeah.
And those other 2 were boyfriend or girlfriends of somebody.
Right.
So
playing the show.
Yeah, playing the show. So that wouldn't have been so they're happy with that. But we would do that, and I think that was a part of our popularity. And then there was like a period of time where I got out of shape and lost the ability to do everything I was doing on stage, just from being on tour and not continuing to work out because I forgot that part. I thought like, okay, I got a record deal, I'm on tour, I finished all that. That's not how that works. Like you just started, so you have to keep up whatever made you entertaining, and eventually I got in my 30s and I kind of had to rebuild my fitness to get ability to do everything I do back. And then in so doing, a lot of people noticed it and were like, could you help me? And I noticed the amount of money that people offer for that kind of thing is just a lot more than they offer for anything else I do. And it's actually kind of a lot of money that it makes. But
personal training, of course, man.
Considering the investment in education is like $1,000. It's not like, now granted, there's more to it than that. You have to prove that you can live that lifestyle, which is being a year-round pretty ripped guy at 46 is not
it's impressive,
that
bro.
Fucking easy.
You're doing it though, man.
Otherwise I wouldn't be able to play music,
No, it's like a holistic approach to playing music. And I think if you're in like a really aggressive metal band, or hard rock band, and you're gonna jump around on stage like you do, you have to stay in shape.
I hurt myself eventually. That's when I had to rebuild. I hurt myself performing, just blew my back out. And I just didn't have the muscles to jump off stages and things left and right and jump up grabbing random dudes and throwing them and just doing just whatever I feel like randomly. A lot of times has these consequences. I mean, I started doing professional wrestling before music, and I learned from these guys, Tony Falk and Gypsy Joe. And Gypsy Joe is one of the first hardcore wrestlers ever. He invented jumping off top of a cage and wrestling alligators. He would wrestle alligators and stuff. And like,
that's awesome.
He would tell me like, if you really give your blood to an audience, you know, they'll remember you forever. And like that reminds me, we had a show before cameras were normal out in Jackson, Tennessee, and like we had back then. There's this song "Shadowboxing to Stay Fit." And we have this like beat break, and I would like do this rhythmic thing, and the band would come back in. And sometimes to fuck with the band, I would like take long time or fuck around with that. Well, in this particular show, I spun around and I whipped my dick out on the audience during that silence,
my gosh,
right? And I just
dude.
stared at everyone with my dick out, and people did not look happy about it. And I felt very embarrassed. And then I felt enraged. And so I turn around, I say the part, and it's a real heavy part, and I just came back and I just headbutted Miles's crash cymbal, right? But that's the exact same moment that Miles is hitting the crash cymbal. Spoiler alert. You can probably see the U-shaped scar still on my head. But it like it dug into my scalp, and then as he hit it, it turned and it shot up and it peeled all the skin to the skull all the way off my head.
Oh my god!
And exactly this pattern, as you can see, like it's like a big fold, and it starts spraying, right? And so I'm immediately like, oh, this feels so good. My adrenaline turned on. It's this warm shit's coming all over me. I'm kind of losing my blood flow where my brain is kind of feeling like a little high. And like, I'm like, oh, this is feeling really good. So I'm kind of like going with it. And then after that first song, like, I think people started realizing like, this is not some kind of like capsules thing. This is like really happening.
This guy's really bleeding a lot.
And dude's like, are you all right, man? I was like, do I look like I'm all right? You know, then we go to our next song, and then like, during this song, I see this like couple in the front, and they're really getting drawn in by the blood. And it's starting to get all over me now. It's spraying everywhere, spraying on the roof and everything.
As you're singing,
yeah,
like,
as I'm singing,
it's shooting out of it.
It's going into the roof a little bit. It's all over the roof at that place now. It's in Jackson, Tennessee.
What?
But so I'm just like start smearing it in my hands, and I look down, and this couple is like, they're really close to each other. You know, they just look really intimate. This like pretty little girl and this boyfriend. And so I just start smearing the blood on them, right? And then they start making out. And then this lady who's like in her 30s, like right behind them, just fucking hits the deck. She's just asleep. You know what I mean? She is experiencing syncope. She is fainted at the sight of these people making out covered in blood, right? So that was my first time ever causing someone to just become unconscious from watching the show. But right after that, the sound man comes up and he's like, you got to stop, dude. You're going to die. You got to go to the hospital. And I'm like, we do this all the time. We'll just do 2 more songs, and whatever you need to do to feel better about this is what I told him. I was bullshitting through I was like scared to stop the show because I knew my adrenaline came down and I was going to have to deal with the reality of whatever was happening. And it seemed like it was really bad. So I was just trying to get this. And Miles, meanwhile, is really drunk, and he's wearing a dress with no underwear, and he's screaming, "Go the fuck away!" at the sound guy, right? He's just wasted and hostile to the sound guy. So the sound guy goes back and turns us back on for 2 more songs. We play the 2 more songs, and then I get off stage, the house lights are on, and I go to put my hair in a ponytail, and God, the way everyone looked at me, because I'm guessing my skin peeled back, you could really see the skull in that light. I mean, everyone looked at me like they were turning green, and this military guy runs up and he's like, "We gotta put salt in that wound stat." I'm like, "No, we don't. No, we don't, dude. What in the fuck do you mean?" And so like Miles like rushes and drunk drives me to the damn hospital. As soon as we get there, they kick him out. He has no underwear on. His genitalia is flying out all over the place. He's just totally wasted. They had more bands that night, but they didn't watch any of them. Everybody came to the emergency room, and I think I got like 25 stitches in my scalp. And then when I came out, everyone was, I think they thought I was going to die just because I bled for so long. And I think everyone felt guilty because they were kind of like participating in me clearly bleeding out and just continuing to sing. But
it's a performance art type thing, man.
Man, if that one had been on video, man, jeez. That'd be a different career for me right now.
That's rock star, man.
But
that's about as that's
wild.
insane.
I couldn't get a morning wood for like a week and a half. That's how much blood I lost. You know what I mean? Surprised they didn't give me a transfusion. They
crazy,
still have
man.
that blood though. It's the American Legion out in Jackson, Tennessee. They still have that blood on the roof, man. You can still see it. That's the last I heard.
It's a phenomenal story. That's a phenomenal story.
Barry, so what is Look What I Did doing right now? And are you guys writing another record? Are you guys
We're writing a new record, and it's most of the way. It's like probably 80%, 70% done.
And who else is a part of this record, man? Who's
Evan Brewer has joined the band on bass, and so it's kind of like the same as Skeet on guitar.
He's the original guitarist.
Well, he wasn't on My First Time, but he was on Minuteman.
Yeah.
Chris, who was our original bass player, is now a guitar player, still playing guitar. Jake still playing drums. And the new music is a little more, I would say, easier to get to listening wise. But themier maybe. There's still a lot of weirdness to it. It's going to be creative weirdness with Look What I Did. There's always going to be something you're going to have to like learn to deal with, that we're making a new thing that your ear. There's always going to be an unfamiliar element. That's what it is. Familiar elements are easy to listen to. Unfamiliar elements are hard to listen to. We like to provide unfamiliar elements that take more listens to get satisfied by. Yeah. And some people won't listen that many times, and that's okay. But maybe they will later on when their friend tells them. Something like that. I love records like that you have to listen to multiple times to, you know, there's something fresh every time you listen to it. There's something interesting that you didn't notice before. Yeah, more details that you can. That's certainly the case with your material, man. I appreciate that. We tried to make it where the 100th listen would be. That was what we were saying when we put Minuteman out. Like, we wanted listen 100 to have whole new stuff you didn't hear, you know, as opposed to songs that sound great on the first listen, sometimes on the 100th listen, that make you want to stab your ears out. Right. And then there's other ones that you listen, like Sleepy Time. You can listen to a Sleepy Time song 1,000 times. Yeah, good luck. Get something new, even knowing how it goes. Right. You know what I mean? No. Yes. So you're gonna have to learn. You have to learn today if you're gonna figure out one of those kind of songs. But you know, that's our current stuff that we're making is maybe not as hard to grasp, but bearing in mind the place that everyone in the band is in their musical journey is kind of like they just want to play cool sounding stuff that sounds cool, and none of them needs to show anyone that they're good anymore. Yeah. No one needs to get their shit in anymore. You know what I mean? If they a simpler part makes the song sound cooler, they're totally pushing for that. You know what I mean? Like, but at the same time, we're not pandering. Right. You know, it's still going to be some creative shit, you know. That's awesome statement. Is there a plan on or a time frame of when you guys are going to be releasing that record? And will you be partnering with a label, or is it totally self-produced, self-released? I don't know about that part yet. We'll see. We're kind of like getting the songs done and making some music videos and kind of like just slowly hyping all the songs. And then once we have them all finished, we are recording them with Lauren from Foxy Shazam, the old guitar player from Foxy Shazam, Lauren Turner, and he is recording this album. And as far as mixing and producing it and stuff, and then as far as like putting it out, we'll see. I don't even give a fuck, honestly, about that part. Is the thing, but usually something happens whenever we get done. Something happens. The way Look What I Did has worked so far is that when we're out of season and we're working on our music, we kind of disappear into the background, and then when we're like armed with a new record and ready to rock and roll, like the media suddenly like starts taking us serious, and then something happens, and we usually get a pretty good steamroll going, and you know what I mean. Hell yeah! But we haven't finished the music yet, and it takes a while, so. Which is lucky, because each time we're doing it, it's like 5 years later. Some of the people that used to be our fans have had a kid and are in a different phase of life, and you know what I mean? But I think we do better with 17, 18-year-olds now than we did 20 years ago, for sure. So when you're doing that 20 years, like who are you touring with the most when you first, like, when you moved out to LA, you know, you have this record done. Like, what was your first experience like on the road when you were really hitting it hard? Like, who were you? Like, we toured with like hardcore bands, metalcore bands, some of the like, you know, like we toured with like Dog Fashion Disco and Tub Ring and like Psycho Stick, and like we just kind of toured with whoever we could, and we didn't fit in with anything. That was where I was going with that. And there was always a lot of weird combos where, you know, I remember we were on tour with Animosity and Ion Dissonance, and it would be kind of good and kind of weird, and there would be some days where, like, you know, remember like Leo from Animosity was like, even said something to the crowd in Alabama one night, like, you guys may like, yeah, look what I did, does some different stuff on the mic, like, but honestly, it's more stuff on the mic than the rest of the bands are doing, and like, you guys should appreciate that. You know what I mean? It's like, he could just scream the whole time if he wanted, you know what I mean? But he's not. He like said something specifically to the crowd about that once, and like, you know, like I remember one time we were on tour with Drop Dead Gorgeous, Human Abstract, and Folly.
No kidding.
And we're in like Pennsylvania, and somebody yells out, "When are you gonna play a breakdown?" No, and we play one breakdown the whole set. That's it. You know what I mean? That's all you get. We don't play a lot of that kind of shit. And so I was just like, if you need a breakdown to mosh, you're a fucking pussy, dude. I was just snapped because I've been on the road for like so long. You know what I mean? And when I yelled that, everybody was like, "Oh!" And then after that, everyone moshed to every single thing. That was something I learned with the hardcore scene. I just like if because they don't understand. Like, let's say you do a 3-part harmony and it's a hardcore show. I think our band is legitimately a hardcore band sometimes, and in some ways. And like, so you hit that 3-part harmony, and now everyone's mad. They're like, "Is this emo? What am I watching? I'm mad."
Yeah, I know that from firsthand.
Yeah, they just don't understand that there could be more ways of doing things. You know, we're coming to it from a Fugazi standpoint or something. I think the hardcore scene has gotten back to a good place now, though. I think it became a trend with the meathead shit in the 2000s, and then it kind of got to a place where it kind of invited in like sort of a gang mentality and a lot of like, I feel like we are in a lot of scenarios where I'm on the mic talking shit to a room full of like men on steroids who just like beat up a like 16-year-old boy for like having the wrong band t-shirt on and smoking a cigarette out in front of the venue. And it's kind of like, dude, you guys have lost the fucking plot. Like, y'all think it's bad for him that he's smoking the cigarette, but what is getting jumped by a bunch of steroid-addled fucking ex-con 35-year-olds do to a 17-year-old boy? You know what I mean? Is this like morally better? Like, what, you guys have gotten so into like your fandom of Minor Threat that you're being the opposite of what Ian MacKaye would be like in every sense. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, that's something I feel like Look What I Did has been doing, is we've been doing the conscience of the punk and hardcore scene during at least our era. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna hold you accountable to, you know, like, if there's a Democrat president, you better still continue talking shit, or we're gonna watch and make sure that, you know, we're gonna make sure people know you didn't. You know what I mean? You're supposed to be talking shit during both sides. If you're really about what you're about, but if not, you know what I mean, you may be faking the punk.
See, that's the thing that bothers me, man, is like sometimes I'll go on Facebook. I know I feel like I'm talking about Facebook every time I talk, but freaking it's like the news. It's like, you know, when you go from like CNN to like MSNBC and Fox, like they all say like the same thing. Have you ever seen that when they like put all the squares in one, you know?
Well, I was a journalist.
But it's like that with people on Facebook. It's like they're all saying the same things and they all believe the same thing. Yeah, they have the same,
well, they're a lot, the purpose of them expressing themselves a lot of times is to virtue signal to a particular group that they're trying to appeal that they're a part of, and they don't understand the nuances of the issue that they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like in any given issue, there's like a nuanced two sides, and then there's a super non-nuanced two sides, right? Like the best example of that would be like a war peace negotiation, right? Like there is no world in which either Ukraine nor Russia has some kind of like fucking nihilistic goal. You know what I mean? Like Russia has a serious security problem, and Ukraine has a civil war going on. That's a problem. And you know what I mean? That situation, in order to ever resolve it, you have to realize that Putin is a human being very different than Adolf Hitler, who might actually have legitimate security interests of his nation that he cares about, right? Like, but you can't fucking say that on the internet, right?
You got to support Ukraine.
Now, I'll say that on the internet, but the reality of like, yes, is Putin, I mean, the one thing you're allowed to say is Putin is this evil, he's basically Adolf Hitler, he only cares about creating a USSR world empire. He's going to stop at nothing to continue past Ukraine all the way into Europe, which is insane.
Yeah.
There's no way in hell he would ever, like, he probably wouldn't even take all of Ukraine. If he had control of it, he'd probably give half of it back, because half of it's not even ethnically Russian. It would be more difficult than it's worth for him to actually, and he has no, you know what I mean? The reasons they want that part of the country is because of that base, because it gives them access to a port. Right. Because we've been kind of pushing to have nuclear weapons basically centered in an alliance against them in that country, which is extremely bad for their security. Imagine if China took over paid the Sinaloa cartel to take over Mexico. They started executing American tourists and then like creeping over the border to Texas and having skirmishes and stuff. And like, what would America do? You know what I mean? We would have, before we even got a chance to discuss, we would already have occupied Mexico, the entirety of it, not just part of it.
Yeah.
And nobody in the world would have stopped us. Everybody would have been like, okay, yeah, obviously you're going to occupy Mexico because they're about to put a nuclear weapon in the Alamo, right? You know what I mean? Pointed at America. Yeah, we would be, that would never, that's basically what they're doing over there to Russia. And, you know, that nuance can't be added in a, when you're doing the like Lakers versus the Celtics politics, where you're like, I've been a Lakers fan since all my friends are Lakers fans. You know what I mean? Like, I can't have a position that isn't pro Lakers.
Yeah.
Ever. Even if it's directly contradictory to the other pro Lakers position I had a minute ago. And even if I just had to pick it. Like now there's this thing where if Trump picks a position, a whole bunch of people will change their mind about that particular position and act like they weren't for it.
Right.
You know, which is a weird phenomenon.
Will follow Trump till the end of time.
Yeah, it's causing, well, either way, they'll follow him or oppose him to the end of time.
And then, you know, like, I'm a Christian, man, but there's other Christians out there that like believe that Trump's the chosen one.
Oh yeah,
you know
he's like a
like,
deific figure.
Yeah.
And there's leftists that think that every single thing he does is motivated by pure evil and intentional harm, right? Which is a wildly unrealistic point of view to have, and doesn't allow you to have much nuance and lead you to totalitarianism and to otherizing people who have a different view than you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really try to like. I don't feel like neither side is. Can't trust either one of them.
No, and I think that what the average person should do is educate themselves as much as possible. I mean, there's so many great books out there about all these topics. Like, I've got One Nation Under Blackmail over there. That book would freaking blow anyone's mind, whether you're conservative or like liberal. But just fight corruption, man, on both sides.
Yeah,
you know, like if there's corruption or some kind of like scheme going on in the political realm, like just learn about it and then just stand up against it, man. Like that's what I'm about, you know. But sometimes it's hard to know what the hell is going on,
and you can be wrong and be proven wrong.
Yeah,
I've been wrong about stuff. I've had things that I believed that I changed my mind because it was proven clearly wrong, you know, like many times. But
yeah. Dude,
you know.
I was going to ask you, man, in 2015, you ran for city council in Davidson County, like Nashville.
No, I never did run.
You didn't run?
No.
Okay.
The one thing that did happen politically is that when I was part of the Ron Paul.
Okay.
Kind of inner circle, to be honest. Like Ron Paul.
Did someone write a Wikipedia article about you that's like incorrect?
I do have a Wikipedia. Well, that part might be incorrect. I did have a campaign exploratory committee I filed that I did not ever go forward with.
Okay.
That's what probably got
There's
confused.
Like this picture of you, bro, like with your head cut, like your hair.
Oh, I had shaved my head and
you like
worked.
cleaned up and wore a suit.
Well, see, the thing is, I got elected by accident to director at large of the Davidson County Republican Party in 2009. That was kind of like, and that's an elected position countywide within that party. And it just happened by accident, kind of like not exactly by accident. Maybe it was a little bit of a knack mixed with accident, but it was kind of a stunt. But I accidentally wound up in that position for 2 years where, you know what I'm saying? So like
absolutely insane.
senators and shit are like coming to me for money from the party.
So
and
like break that down.
I ended up kind
bro.
of influencing the core
that?
values of the party. I was like, I actually became kind of a major player in the party.
Okay, that's what I was referring to. Like, so what? Obviously, you're interested in politics, but what made you want to be more serious about it and like?
This was like
campaign.
I just got involved in the Ron Paul thing because I was just really motivated by that one, and then.
Which was what year was the Ron Paul stuff? Was that
I got started in 2007. That was when I first dealt with Bitcoin too, and I started mining Bitcoin and then decided against it. That was in 2007.
Bro, you would be a billionaire.
Yeah, the
now.
other guys are billionaires that were doing it. But I was in with the early Ron Paul campaign. We got smoked in that first election. A lot of it was because the Republican Party screwed us. And then we went in and we took over the positions in national conspiracy all over the nation and changed all the rules to the Republican Party. And I was a part of that. And so we got in, and me getting in and having the position I had, I mean, we were on tour heavily playing G.G. Allen, I Kill Everything I Fuck every single night. and I'm now suddenly an elected Republican officer within the party, right?
So you guys had a G.G. Allin cover worked into your set?
At this point.
Okay.
Yeah, we're playing it everywhere, every night. I'm playing G.G. Allin in front of God and everybody, and then I'm also like an elected official now in the Republican Party, and those people are coming to me for money and, you know, whatever, and I have the ability to tell them no and whatever. And it was like... kind of in a way, I kind of had I gained a lot of influence because I was one of the young people that knew how to use the internet and stuff and the whole thing. So over time, they kind of came more friendly to libertarian ideas. They let Ron Paul be in our straw poll. They kind of, now I bet you if I went back to one of their meetings and I gave a speech and I said like, I was right about all of that one, you know what I mean? I bet they'd be like, yeah, you know, with the FBI, we were warning them about the Patriot Act, that all those things were going to be used against them, and they were, you know what I mean? All that stuff. But yeah, that was wild. I just accidentally got elected. I held that position for 2 years. I do kind of now know a lot of like leading Tennessee state level politicians as friends personally, and can actually call them and influence them a little bit, due to the time I spent doing that.
That's cool, man.
But it was weird. It was a weird fluke. It was like a moment of history that I think caught me and was using me. Bear in mind, my great granddad was a state senator in Texas. My grandma was the first woman to ever run a region of a federal department in the federal government, right? Like my cousin's mayor of Lebanon. My other cousins on my other side are Tennessee Supreme Court justices. I do think there's like just a knack that I had when the moment was happening for some of these things for the accident to kick in. But
yeah, did you ever want to go to law school or anything like that?
I was headed to law school.
Okay.
And then I dropped out of college my senior year because I felt like I was being indoctrinated and I felt like I wasn't being taught. And also my grandma kind of died. You know, like all my family members that were attorneys died young of cardiovascular, you know, I think stress-related cardiovascular incidents.
Yeah, that sucks, man.
And so I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So my life is about sports and fitness and rock and roll.
Heck yeah. Dude, I'm going to clip that so hard.
Yeah. I do know what you mean, man. I love it.
No, man, you're a fascinating dude to talk to, man. And
amazing.
Like,
I appreciate
I'm
that.
hoping we can hang out again more. You know,
I'm
on
down.
a
I'd
more
be down to
regular
come back and do
basis.
it again. Yeah, for sure.
Like, dude, it's been cool like listening to you talk about your band, and I think the music that you make is so unique and exciting, and I'm looking forward to the next record, man. Like that's gonna be awesome. And
me too.
When it gets closer to release it, maybe we can get more of the other guys here, you know.
Yeah.
But
they're a little bit more media reticent. Like they don't even like to use social media at all whatsoever.
That's right. Maybe, we can convince them to come out.
Sometimes, you know, when hype is rolling, sometimes they'll come out of the woodworks.
It'd be great to get Evan, you know, if he was a part of the record. It'd be cool to interview him as well.
I know he lives like in Hendersonville, so it's not like that far from here. I don't think.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. Is that far? I'm not sure. This is part of the state I don't go to that much. I do want to go to the Bell Witch Cave, though.
Oh, yeah. It's not far. It's Adams, Tennessee.
Yeah, it's a little bit up the way. But
20-minute drive from here.
Go in there and see what's happening in there.
Yeah, see what's happening in there. Yeah, dude. Check it out. Any witches in here?
Y'all got any witches in here?
That's funny. Well, dude, it's been amazing having you on. Christian, thanks for hanging with us too, man.
Thanks for having me, man. This has been unbelievable.
In an awesome way.
Happy to be here.
You know, I guess like one last question, and feel free to talk about this as long as you need to, but man, what advice do you have for like young musicians that, you know, are coming up in the music world these days? I know that's kind of a big open-ended question, but like what advice would you give to like someone who wants to do something unique and creative in the music space in 2025?
I mean, the song we're writing post everything, it's about to come out, kind of like the first verse lyric, maybe somewhat paraphrased. Being in a band isn't cool, and it never was. Punk rock icons are nursing home grandmas. You know what I'm saying? If you want a horse to beat that is dead, I can get you one, and if you beat it hard enough, they will think you are the chosen one, right? Like, the way to look at it now is that genres are over. Bands aren't cool because of genres. And if you give up on genres and you just start creating songs and just having your voice, then you can beat an AI. But you can't beat an AI at doing death metal.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds self-similar to other death metal, and that is pure death metal. And AI is going to do pure death metal better than any human being is going to be able to do it, because all you're doing is copying tropes, right?
Yeah.
So if you stop fucking copying tropes, then people might come to shows again, because there'll be something unique to see again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there hasn't been that anymore. It's just been like a drill down, like almost like metal, if you think about it, is getting down to like I'm not trying to talk shit on, like, for example, what's that? Kubla
Khan,
right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, to make this even heavier, let's take the notes out. You know what I mean? Let's just turn it into one brown note and just for the entire album. Like, we're, you know what
there's
I mean?
Oh,
no like well, I guess Meshuggah would be like another band that kind of took all the harmonic content out of their music, but in a way they did create something
They did have those
new.
jazzy interludes, the
Yeah,
or whatever, but
of
like
course, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there became like a drill down to like less detail, and
right. But I know what you're talking about, bro. Like, a lot of guitar players in the metalcore space, it's just like a sound effect. It's a noisemaker. It's like
and the vocalist is
shifted and
effectively a tambourine, and it's just like, we need to see your identity and your personality again, and that's the post everything movement. We're done pretending like goth is a thing, or punk is a thing, or metal is a thing. These things have been going on for like long enough to be, like, okay, in the 70s, you go to a bluegrass show in Nashville, you might get fucking knifed. You know what I mean? By 1985, you watch that on Sunday at 11 a.m. at Opryland.
Yeah.
With your grandma.
No kidding, dude. That's,
you know what I'm saying?
I don't think people know about that.
That's happened
crazy,
to everything,
dude.
And there's nothing new that's where you can get knifed. You know what I mean? So make something new where somebody might get knifed, where the sound is not predictable, and and I feel like the people that don't play with guitars and basses and drums are better at doing that right now, and that's why they're winning. And if you want to win with that, you got to join that post everything, man. You got to just stop caring about genres. We got to stop even using genres somehow. There's got to be a breakout moment where we're like, there's some new way we're doing this besides all sounding like true metal or true whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's already been so done, dude. It's been done. I would rather listen to the people that did it right the first time.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like the deathcore movement. By the time that thing came into a movement, there'd already been 20 years worth of great bands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't necessarily need another 20 years worth of deathcore bands. They were a pretty simple concept past, don't get me wrong, some of the bands like Animosity is sort of deathcore and more deathy than core, but awesome. But it's like, did we need a 20 years later kind of new metalization of it? Really? If people could have just actually heard the original bands. I think now you can just look up the original bands. That's the problem with the genres, why they're not really working the same, and why bands just aren't cool anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But post everything, man. That's the future. That's where we've always been there, and we're asking the world to join us.
Heck yeah, dude. Well, bro, thanks for sharing your time and your wisdom and your story with us today.
I appreciate y'all,
And,
man. I'll come back and we'll do it again. This is a fun setup, and y'all are really deeply, you're on that level with music. You know what I mean?
Thanks, man. We try to be.
Thank you.
It's just something that you are or you aren't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
On a certain level.
Well, thank you, man. And anybody that enjoyed this episode, please share it on whatever forums you're posting in.
And tell your friends about Look What I Did.
Yeah.
We got 20-something years of music. We got a rock opera in there. We've done so many different things, and we did things earlier than everybody else, I promise. We did some new things we'll do some new things this record that have never been done before, the way that we'll do it, and that's the one thing
it's truly original music. That's really what it is.
I appreciate that. That was the main goal.
I said it.
I've even taken
yesterday.
it to the point that I don't choose what I listen to, and I haven't for 15 years. Personally, I don't ever like sit down and be like, I'm gonna listen to this record or that record. I've got pretty well primed algorithms, and I let them decide always. That way I don't become self-referential or whatever, repetitive, which is unpleasant. It's more comfortable to listen to shit you want to listen to that's repetitive and what do you call it? Familiar.
Yeah, comfortable.
But
you want to be uncomfortable. That's what challenges you as a musician.
Yeah, and in every way in my life I like to be uncomfortable. But that's another thing for another time. But yeah, musically being creative, that has always been our only goal. Trying to do something actually new somehow.
Yeah, dude. Hell yeah. Well, with that, we'll sign off on this episode of Shred Sessions. Everyone, Barry, Donegan, look what I did. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace.